This is Alive and Thriving. Hello and welcome. If you are brand new to this show, my name is Jessica Reed. I am your host. I am really excited to have you here today as I share this episode with a very special guest. Today, I have a different style of episode for you. We are diving in with a guest, but we're not just having an interview. Oh, you are going to learn so much, by the way, still. But what we're actually going to do is I am going to introduce you to my human design coach, Tegan Parkinson. I met Tegan in a mentoring container that I am in with Jazz Jervis. Tegan is amazing. So, Tegan was a coach in that space. And Tegan has helped me to so deeply understand what I currently understand, as you will hear through this episode. And also, as I'm so aware, I am just at the very beginning of my human design journey. And I love that what we did in this conversation is we basically allowed our sacrals to respond. Tegan had my human design chart up in front of her. And so everything that she spoke about today with me was spoken from the lens of analyzing my chart and having this really beautiful understanding of seeing me through that lens. And it was just a really amazing conversation. So what you are going to hear from today is about human design. So we're not going to go deeply into the who's and the hows of how it came about and all those things, which Tegan is so capable of sharing with us. What we really wanted to do was have a really fun conversation and just basically just dive straight in. So Tegan shares her journey with us. She shares a bit of her story. She shares a little bit around things that she sees people doing within human design that aren't actually fully embodying human design. And we talk about the reality of how it's not just all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, there is a part of this episode where Tegan puts me not on the spot, that's not the right word, but she said she knew exactly where I needed to go today. She said, let's talk about this. And I dropped an F-bomb. I was like, okay. Not because I thought I had to explain what it was, but because I was like, this is something in the embodiment of my design that I am finding such an internal challenge with. And what you will hear as you hear Tegan speak when she is just in her element is that the depth of knowledge that she has in this space and the way that she teaches, being an ex-teacher, she understands how to meet you where you're at. And the way that she teaches this is just so intuitive and so knowledgeable and just so natural for her to support you deeply in this way. So, it goes beyond just looking at here's your strategy and here's your authority. And this is that surface level. Tegan just looks at the depth and she is amazing. So Tegan also co-coaches in the Transcendence Mastermind. Tegan comes in and joins us once a month. And she has been such a valuable addition into this space, helping the mastermind ladies to, if they choose to, embody their human design in life and filter that into the lens of their business. Because as you'll hear today, you can't just be like, I'm going to do human design for my business. It doesn't work like that. This is your design. This is you learning where you are conditioned and not conditioned. This is you stepping into, if you choose to, or seeing where you already were, acting from a space of alignment that maybe society has told you was wrong. It's lots of fascinating things in this conversation. So I'll give you Tegan's formal bio. Tegan's gift as a human design guide is her ability to provide intuitive guidance that is grounded in the logic of the source material. She understands and values the different ways people learn on their unique design and has skills to cater to this and help clients take the step into embodying their design in all aspects of life. Let's get into this conversation. As I said, it was a super fun one to record. I really loved doing this kind of deep dive into something that wasn't like a straightforward interview. And love that she put me like in a space you'll hear. I was like, you're going to have to take over from hosting because I was processing. It was like we were having a session and I was having this moment where I was like, oh my God. And I had no words and I was processing. So you're going to have to listen to hear the way that she just absolutely nailed exactly what I needed to hear.
You're listening to Alive and Thriving with Jessica Reed, the podcast that's all about empowering you to achieve optimal wellness and success through self-care, holistic practices, and raw conversation. Jessica and her expert guests are here to share powerful insights and strategies to help you overcome stress and anxiety, take charge of your life, and thrive in life and in business. Grab a cuppa and let's dive in.
Welcome, Tegan, to Alive and Thriving. This is going to be the funnest conversation ever, I think.
I know. I'm so excited. Like, we're giggling already, which is like happens all the time when I talk to people.
Oh, now fair warning if you are listening, we have no plan for today's episode. This is not some structured interview where we are going to be moving through a series of questions. Tegan is a responder. Tegan loves to have something to respond to. And today I have given her my human design chart to respond to. So what we thought we might do is dive a little bit more into what I might even ask you in a moment to explain to people who are curious about human design. What is it? And then from there, we're going to have a deep dive into my chart and literally just let Tegan share what she feels good in terms of having a deeper understanding around getting to know me. Like I feel a little bit vulnerable, like a little bit naked right now.
I was about to say, I think I might end up putting you in the hot seat with like throwing some questions at you, but I think it'll be really great.
No, please do. Now, as I said in the introduction, Tegan, I met she is a coach in a container that I am in. So Tegan has been phenomenal part of my human design journey. I love Tegan so much that I have worked one-on-one with her, and then I invited her to come in and support my mastermind container to navigate their human design journey. And we have a call with Tegan once a month, and then she's in our Slack channel. And even I think Heidi commented yesterday, I love Tegan Day.
I know. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's so nice.
The thing is, the depth and what blows my mind about our conversations is just how you just channel this information and it comes out, and then it's like someone's just sitting there with their jaw dropped on the floor. Like that is so freaking spot on to what I am experiencing or to what is going on for me. And it's I haven't seen anyone yet be like, oh, no, that doesn't resonate. Everyone's just, I think Kobe messaged me once. I think I forwarded it to you. And I was like, she said, I don't know how she knows what she knows. But it's been life changing. And they're big words, like life changing. And I know what I have experienced from you has been life changing. And I don't say that lightly. Like all the challenges, even recently, I was mid-launch and something was really off. And I had this conversation with you where I was like, I told myself that I had been operating from my authority, but instead I was having a response and I was running with it. And when I then said to you, actually, I feel like maybe this would be better. Like I've had this idea. And you were like, that is so, we'll probably swear in this episode. So that is fucking aligned with your chart. Like, why aren't you doing that? And then I listened because I had, I don't know, like 10 minutes of voicemails from you, which was payback for the 10 minutes of voicemail I sent you. But what I did with those messages was I put them in my earbuds and I sat down and I closed my eyes and I listened and I replayed and I listened and I replayed and I listened and I just felt into my body for everything that you were saying. And I just had these real moments of clarity. And between you and a conversation that I had with another mentor, it was like, I understand where I was out of alignment. I understand why the messaging in that launch wasn't working for me. I understand why I felt a bit funny and how amazing that we actually got to come back into my body then and not after I'd run with it for a year. Yeah, but not only that, over the last 18 months, having these understandings around the way I'm supposed to make decisions around, for me, even just sitting on that emotional authority is huge because, first of all, I save thousands in online shopping. I'm like, I'm going to leave that cart till later and I'm going to come back. And then I have a high and a low. But I have these stories, and I've shared a lot of these on the podcasts before, so I won't go too deep into some of them, but I have so many stories about myself. And I would assume you have people say this all the time. Like, I literally thought there was something wrong with me because of how extreme my emotions would go and the depth that I would feel things. And I now understand, thanks to you, that I am actually here to help people have a healthy emotional experience in their life. What I'm doing in my business is so aligned with my greater purpose. But there were so many stories that I had about being flaky, and I'll say these stories because you could probably point out on my chart shortly things, reasons why. I won't go into that. I'll let you do that. But stories around why I couldn't stick to anything, stories around pivoting all the time, stories around failure, stories around, do you know what? Even just jumping in and interrupting someone. Like, I understand that's not polite, but it's also a very managing thing to do.
Yeah.
The stories around being so multidimensional and people telling me that was wrong. So many different things that I held so much meaning and shame to for my whole life. And then the trying to fit my business into this box. Like, I'm not meant to be in a box. And I'm not meant to be doing things in the way that I was previously doing things. So, anyway, I'm going to zip it. Can you, first of all, tell us a little bit more about you, but then also about human design, and then we'll jump into it.
Okay. I always find this such like an overwhelming question. Tell us about you. I used to be a primary school teacher, so I did that for most of my, say, like adult life. And before that, I was a dance teacher. So working with children and teaching is something that's been a really huge part of my life. And as a part of that, I was introduced to mindfulness, and I was going through my own personal struggles as well in terms of mental health. And so I started practicing yoga and meditating, and those practices just transformed so much for me because I was so out of my body. I was so disconnected from my body. I was so afraid of actually feeling anything. And so those practices really gave me the tools for that. And then I've dabbled in like lots of different aspects of spirituality and studied different things from both a spiritual and a scientific perspective. Like the mindfulness studies I've done was actually like a psychology post-grad study. So I have a lot in my chart that aligns to being highly spiritual, but then I also have a lot in my chart that aligns to being logical. So I feel like I bring a really nice balance between the two because I find most people are either like really strongly one way or the other and they don't land in the middle. And so then I'm not a primary school teacher anymore. I left that at the end of 2019, and that was around the time where I started to explore human design. And for the first year, I would say I wasn't really working to embody my design because I was just learning as much as I can. And to be honest, that keeps people locked in their not self. Like a first line profile, yes, that is a strategy that can be helpful. But when I truly started just focusing on my sacral, so I'm a sacral authority and I'm a generator. So I'm designed to respond for those that are like new to human design. And so that's literally my whole life, is to be in response. And that response can only happen in the present moment. And so when I really started to hone in and just focus on that, so much started to shift in terms of other aspects of my design falling into place. And I think that is why I've been able to embody my design, I feel like, in such a grounded way, because my focus has never been on information first. My focus has been on my relationship with my body is number one. Then following my strategy and authority is next. And then the information that I need to know about my design will come up. Like, people know what their unconscious moons are, what their like unconscious Jupiters are, what their like conscious Plutos are. I could tell you some of those things, but I don't really know because I haven't felt the times in the early days when I focused on all of that, it didn't help me. And so that is something really important. But then that approach also aligns with my design being a 2/4. So yeah, I work with human design. I also work with the Akashic Records, which is this beautiful healing energy. And I think that's also a reason that, like, Jess, I've been able to work with you the way I have, because you had that one-on-one session where we opened up your Akashic Records. And so I've seen and have that connection on a soul level, which like exists beyond the human design chart, in my opinion. So it's, yes, I'm guiding you on in relation to your design, but also like I've felt your soul. I've seen and know like that level. So also like I can sense when something's pushing you to act in a way that I know isn't in alignment with that as well. So I think that there's like this beautiful, to me personally, like I love the way the Akashic Records and human design come together to support people because it makes it even more individualized.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful experience to sit in as well. It really just like full body feel.
Yeah, it's such a lush energy. And so human design, what is human design? Human design it's a complex system and it combines lots of different things. So it combines astrology, the chakra system, the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah, tree of life, quantum physics, lots of things come together. And essentially it's a map that tells us how we're meant to energetically function. And to me, it's like very mechanical. Like I love astrology, but there's so much of astrology that's open to interpretation by the astrologer. And look, human design people do interpret things in their own ways, but there's also very set things of, if you have a defined solar plexus, this is how you're going to experience things and this is how it's going to function. So like that logical side of me loves that.
Yeah.
And it really is just this blueprint of how we're correctly designed to function in our life. And they say it's like Ra, who's the guy that the messenger of human design, or however you like to word what he did. This will happen many times. I'll lose my train of thought.
They're actually really used to it because I do the same thing all the time.
So like they say that the deconditioning journey in human design is 7 years. And that's not like I've learned about my design, so now in 7 years I've deconditioned. That's about actively doing things. And the thing is, you can't make yourself be your design. That's a massive mistake that people make. It's, I'm going to try and be like da-da-da-da-da. No, you have to look at the ways you're not being yourself. And then that's where it's like knowing about your human design is so powerful, but what tools do you have to support that? And that's where I was really lucky because I'd had 4 or 5 years of building all these tools, of being able to move through things and connect with myself, so that when I found human design, I'd already done some of the deconditioning, but also I have the tools and practices to support it. Yeah. So it's like when I notice that so like when I notice I'm prematurely taking action, I know that's coming from my undefined root, because it's our undefined centers that mess with us the most, in my opinion. And
yes, let's talk about uncertainty.
I know, poor Jess.
Apparently 70% of the population.
Exactly right. So it's like that, knowing that, it's then okay. And having an undefined root, I also know I don't manage stress well. That is really impactful on my body, combined with my undefined spleen. Like stress and pressure actually always leads me to be sick. Yeah. And I was someone like so addicted to that. Like I thought I thrived under pressure, but I was just so disconnected from my body and so in my not self that I couldn't see that.
Yeah.
And so now it's like when I feel that pressure, and that can come from factors in my life. It can come from people, like my son's a defined root, that I feel that all the time. And so now it's okay, when I sense that, what can I do? I can bring myself back into my body. I have to be able to be present with the discomfort, because that's the thing. Like to me, deconditioning is shadow work. And if you don't have tools to deal with those shadows, then you're only thinking you're being your design. And so then it's like when people are like, oh, I'm just doing human design in business. Like I call such bullshit on that because you cannot, human design is not something you can only apply to one aspect of your life. You can't be like, oh, I do human design business, but then the rest of your life doesn't do it. That is coming from your mind. Human design is something that impacts all aspects of your life if you're connecting with it in an embodied way. And your mind will have you thinking that you can manipulate it and play with it and all of that. And look, I've been guilty of that 100%, but you actually can't. Like being a sacral response, if you are a generator or manifesting generator, like you're meant to respond in the present moment. And if you're truly living in that, you're not concocting situations to respond to. You're truly honoring that and letting that take you wherever you're meant to go. And that is the hardest thing of being a generator and manifesting generator, because then how do you release control? Because we actually have no control over what we're going to respond to.
That's true. You said on one of our calls the other day, if you're not surprised by your response, then you're probably not actually having a response.
I'm so glad that sat with you, because I really sat with
Oh.
that for weeks before I mentioned it on that call.
Yeah, no, I did. It really sat with me because it is, like you said, it's not something that just happens overnight. And even though, yes, it has brought in so much alignment in my life and in the way that I'm learning to navigate my business through the lens of human design, at the same time, it's really hard. And yeah, it's like this balance between alignment, which you feel because you come into this space of where you are operating from your self theme. And so I know I'm learning, when do I feel satisfied and what makes me feel that way. But then I'm also learning when I'm in a state of frustration as well, to be looking at what's led me there and where, like you said, is that coming from an undefined center? Am I operating from past conditioning? And when I am doing that, that is hard. That is often me going against everything. It's so funny. It's hard to explain. What I'm trying to say right now is like, when you are embodying your human design, there are going to be parts of your body that are screaming like, this is so uncomfortable and it's not how it's meant to be. That is your conditioning. But then there's going to be these other parts that are like, I deeply understand why I've always been like that.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense about me.
Yeah.
So there's this balance. I think that's what I was trying to say. There's like this profound kind of peace and acceptance with who you are. But then there's this also like really extreme, like, this is fucked. I want to do this because everyone is telling me to do this and this is the logical thing to do. But my response and then my authority, which is to wait out an emotional wave, said no. It said no.
It's so great and look, people come to human design and they feel seen for the first time. It's, oh my God, this person's spoken to my soul in a way that never has been before. And that's amazing when that happens. And then people get so excited, but that's just not even the start, because it is torture to then live in this conditioned world as yourself.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And that when you're like properly in the human design experiment, and you can dabble and use it how you want. Like, not everyone's meant to be like me and be like, yes, I'm fully in this experiment. But there's this point at 3.5 to 4 years where you suddenly hit, it's like this brick wall where you can't even force your body to do something. So it's before that, it was like, I might not respond to something, but I could still take action on it. But then they hit this point where I was just like frozen, and I could my mind was like, come on, just do it. Get out of this discomfort. But my body physically wouldn't let me. Wow. And that was the most challenging, I would say, in my experiment, that's been one of the most challenging periods, is that, because it was like my mind was losing its shit, but my body, but I couldn't take any action to avoid it. I just had to be in it. But now, like, it's set me up. So now, like, coming out the other side of that, I feel like I live fairly in response in all aspects of my life. Like, I don't plan a lot in advance or anything like that. And to be honest, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, that's quite shocking to me, because I used to be someone that had everything planned out in advance. Like, I was a control freak. And now I'm just like, oh, someone's, because I don't have a permanent home that I live in at the moment. So where I am now, I've got a month left, and like people will start me like, oh, so where are you going to be? I'm like, I've had no response to figure it out. And so like the second half of last year, I did that, and it would get to 2 days left in the house we were in, and suddenly I would have a response to something, to move somewhere else. And it was like this ultimate learning of being like, oh, my response will always hold me. And I live in a space where like getting a place to live is hard in this area. It's challenging everywhere now in Australia. But it really taught me that the response will bring you things. And also when there's no response, it's got your back. So there'd be times I'd go to book something and I would feel it. I'm like, oh, my body doesn't have the energy to take that. And then 2 weeks later, I would end up booking that same thing that I'd already looked at, but it would be way cheaper. So you can also know that there's a response. Like sometimes I find I'll have a response for something, but then there's actually no energy there behind it to take action yet.
I think that's when I was saying I was misaligned through launch. Like that's what happened. I had the response and I was like, bam. But I didn't have the wave first. And when I did have the wave and came back to it, the energy wasn't there to take action on those things.
Yeah.
That's a big learning space for me.
And you have a really challenging combination in that being a manifesting generator wants to move really quickly because it's like responding to everything quick. Like knowing a kid's design and watching them is the best because you see, say, a manifesting generator in its pure form. And there's a reason why most of the people diagnosed with ADHD are manifesting generators, because they're just constantly responding and taking action because their motor center is connected to the throat. So their energy's there right away. Yeah. But you're an emotional authority. Like you're not meant to make decisions in the now. There's no clarity for an emotional authority in the present moment. So for you, it's like, there's that response and you've got every motor center defined. So there's a pressure to like go
and do it now. I've got the willpower to do it. I've got the drive to use. Yeah.
You know, the root pressure's ready to go, but no, because you'll always could be taking action on things that aren't correct for you because you haven't ridden your emotional wave on it.
Yeah.
So then like having like a collective wave, like expectations are such a big thing for you. So it's imagine taking premature action on something that you haven't ridden your wave on, and then your expectations aren't met but they're not met because it wasn't correct, but you haven't taken the time to ride the wave, but you've taken action. So you got that expectation that it's going to be successful, but then it's not because you haven't. So then you've also got the low of expectations not met, and the frustration of that. And then also the feeling of, oh, fuck, I didn't ride my emotional wave.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yes, yes. And it's so evident to me now the times that I do that. And then I can pull myself up and I can be like, okay, and be more aware. But yeah, it is so evident now. Every time that is happening for me, I feel it. And I'm so aware of all of those not self themes that I love that. I also love that I have you to be able to come in and also share these times where I am feeling out of self, because sometimes like me being so early in my journey, I'm not going to pretend to know everything about my chart. Holy moly, there is so much to learn. Like I'm still learning to embody the basics.
I don't know everything about my chart, Jess. Yeah. Like
I don't think it's possible. That's possible. Like
some people probably say it is. I feel like sometimes I'm the worst like human design student in that obviously I know stuff like I'm a second line, so I can't see myself clearly. I'm never going to be able to. But I'm like, I only want to study the things I have a response for. And so that means that the things that I learn are right for me. But then there's that conditioning of a good student tries to learn everything. And so then
thanks for responding to this conversation.
Yes, because that's the thing, like the sounds of the sacral.
It's so noisy lately. I'm so sorry I interrupted you, but I'm
oh my God,
sitting here observing my sound. And I know like when we chat, you'll say to me, you probably didn't pick up on that, but you just had a response. Go back and listen. There is like your sacral has responded in that moment. And so last night I was having a conversation with my partner. And I couldn't get words. I was just like, And he was like, are you going to speak? And I was like,
You're like, oh, I have spoken. The sacral.
See, it's so shitty with me. I don't know. It just felt really natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand. I was agreeing with you. Like, I was agreeing with you. You just don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge thing. Anyone with a defined sacral, so anyone that's listening that's a generator or a manifesting generator, like you need to let your body start making those sounds again. I feel like I was really lucky. I think being a teacher and working with kids, like I hadn't conditioned those sounds out of myself as an adult. So they've always been there quite vocally. But that's so powerful because the sacral will let out the sound before your mind can step in. And so that's just like what I have pointed out to you, Jess, to get you to go back and listen to it. Oh, your sacral made it, let itself be known before the mind stepped in. And that's where it all comes back to what practices outside of human design do you have to connect with your body, to cultivate awareness. If you don't have an ability to have awareness, then you're never going to catch yourself in any not self activity. And it's not about shaming yourself for being in your not self or anything like that. I think the not self is so beautiful. I love when not self stuff comes up for me because it's such an invitation to, I like to say, approach myself with love and curiosity. It's a chance to explore aspects of myself. Plus, I'm a generator. Like our sacrals, we're here to know ourselves. So it's like learning to be focused on myself. I freaking love it. Now, I used to not. Like when I did, like before I came to human design, I had to work really hard at even like liking myself just a little bit. So obviously that's the work in progress, but we're here to know ourselves first. And you need to have practices that cultivate awareness. And to have awareness, you have to be able to be present.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work. Like I meditated every day, every morning, but it would have been like 6 years. And I'm not a strategic person. There's nothing in my chart really that points to me being strategic, but I needed that. And for probably 3 or probably for 4 of it, I journaled as well. So I would meditate and journal every morning. And for that time, I needed that structure because that really helped me connect with myself and understand myself. And then a couple of years ago, because of the foundation that I'd built and laid with these practices over such a long time, now I'm able to be more receptive to it. So I'm more fluid with it. And that's more aligned to my design. But I would never go back and change that period I had as the foundation too. So there's that aspect as well. It's, if I had have just been like, I'm receptive, so I'm not having any structure or routine, I wouldn't be at the place I'm at now.
Yeah.
Because there are things that say might be not self, but serve for a while because of your conditioning, because you are who you are right now, which is your design, but it's also your conditioning. And so like back then, yes, I would have been receptive in aspects of my life, but I was very strategic. I'd been conditioned to be very strategic. If I had have just like thrown everything out the window and tried to be my design, I probably would have ended up in a ditch somewhere, curled up in the fetal position. Like, oh my God, because my nervous system would have had the capacity to hold it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, right? Like, you can't just jump in and be your design. And there's people I've met that know nothing about human design and they are really aligned with their design.
Yeah.
You don't need to know human design to be aligned with your design. You need practices where you build a relationship with your body, where you listen to your body. And human design is great because it helps you understand how your body communicates with you, how your body is designed to make decisions, how you're meant to function in the world. And it also, to me, the greatest thing for me is in terms of relationship and understanding, okay, like right now between Jess and I, like I'm amplifying her ego energy. I'm amplifying her emotional energy. I'm amplifying her root pressure. I'm amplifying the energy from her spleen. She's amplifying the energy from my ajna. So there's a lot of exchange in energy playing out. Like there's channels in there where you've got the power over me, right? Which is something that could say cause friction between people. But I understand those things playing out. And so then it's, to me, it takes the personalization out of things.
Because you see it as mechanics.
It's mechanics. It's not personal.
Yeah.
Look, sometimes it can still feel personal, but way less. I used to, because I have so many undefined centers, I used to take everything really freaking personally. And I think it's a big thing when you have an undefined solar plexus and you amplify emotions. When you're amplifying a person's emotions, when you're with them, it feels personal. It really does. And so learning that it's not has been so liberating, because if I'm with you and you like, and we're hanging out and I can feel you go into a low, which feels way more intense for me than it does for you because I'm amplifying it, then I'm like, oh, what have I, in the past, it would be like, oh, what have I done to Jess? Like, why is she upset? She must be having a shit time because of me. Oh my God, I better fix it to make her feel better.
Oh, so many people would be resonating with this right now. Because like you said, I could slip into a low at any time.
Yes.
And for you with an undefined solar plexus, you're going to amplify that energy. And I see that as if you haven't been in a space, like I've seen that where people are like, oh, like what's happening? Are you okay? Are you mad at me?
Yeah.
So oblivious. Like, no, I just literally just, I just dropped. My energy just dropped. And I've been, and I, on the other hand, have been really, really conscious of that drop, wondering, do they think I'm mad at them? Do they think that so I've taken on that from that space as well, wondering if my low has impacted.
The solar plexus, and look, I don't know if this because I have an open solar plexus. So an open center is when there's no gates coming out of it at all. And so then you have no filter for that energy, because if you have an undefined solar plexus, you would filter it through the gates that you have activated when you're amplifying that energy. But I don't have that. So for me, emotions has been the most confusing and challenging experience throughout my life. But it's also meant that I've had the capacity to create wisdom around the emotional experience without any filters.
Yeah.
And it's probably like my open solar plexus is probably one of the favorite aspects of my design, to be honest. And I really feel like if the only center that people understood was the solar plexus, so many relationships would change, because most couples tend to be a defined solar plexus and an undefined solar plexus. And the same cycles play out, right? What Jess just described, right? Jess will go into a low. And to her, it won't even feel like a low. She probably just feels fine. And then I come along and I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong, Jess? What can I do to fix it? And Jess says, I'm fine. Then the person with the undefined solar plexus or open solar plexus feels gaslit, because they're like, no, you're not. Like, I know you're not okay. Just tell me what's wrong. And so then the person with the defined solar plexus then starts to question their own connection to their emotions because of what the undefined solar plexus person is projecting onto them.
Wow.
And so then you can see how challenging that is in relationship.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Wow. Oh, I can feel like everyone listening is, oh, I see that playing out one way on one side of the fence or the other. Like I can see that playing out in my life.
So generally when I do a session with someone and I talk about the solar plexus, I always explain the experience, the emotional experience of the opposite, because I think it's really important to understand. As someone with an open solar plexus, I have a son who has a defined solar plexus. It's highly defined. He has multiple waves activated. It's really freaking strong. And I can see the patterns that used to play out before I understood human design. Whereas now I can really be aware of just allowing him to be in his emotional experience and not try to fix it. And to be comfortable with that takes a lot of work. You have to be really okay. And as a parent, it's even more challenging, because some days I'll pick him up and it like, he'll get in the car and it just radiates out of him. And I'm like, oh, I just like, oh, it's terrible. But now whatever I think he's feeling, not feeling that bad. And now when I approach someone with a defined solar plexus and I get the feeling that something's not okay, I don't want to say something to them being like, oh, no, because then that's disempowering them from their own emotional experience and can also then lead them to shut down even more, which is even more unhealthy for all of us that are amplifying the emotional energy. But I would just be like, hey, if I noticed it in you, Jess, I'd be like, hey, Jess, just know that if you ever want to talk, like, I'm here. Because also, like, us with the undefined solar plexuses, we back the defined solar plexus people into a corner when they're in a low and try and force them to externalize. And that is like the worst time for them to try and externalize. Because when someone's in a low, they need to just be like on their own to process.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think if we pop my chart up on the screen,
Yeah.
and then anyone who is watching on YouTube can follow along, and anybody listening can have a look at the chart in the show notes. But let's pop it up and just see what stands out to you today.
Well, I actually want you to talk about something first before we do that.
Sure. Anything in particular?
I want you to talk about finding out about innocence motivation.
Oh.
I feel like it's a really important thing to talk about because I feel like that was a massive penny drop moment for you in terms of your human design. So for
And
everyone
that's
that's
what I meant
listening,
by my little comment. Like, I'm still struggling with not understand it. I'm still struggling with
how do you navigate that in life? Because it's
navigating it.
like
That's
the total opposite to how we're meant to live. So in human design, there's 6 different motivations that you can have, and each one has a transference. So it has a partner, right? Most of us, to be honest, live in our transferred motivation because there's this whole thing of we identify with what we're not. Our brains have a negative bias. We look for the negative in life. That's why a gratitude practice is so powerful because it actually trains your brain to start to look for positive things because that's not what is natural to us. So there's these 6 motivations. 4 of them are pretty like chill, like fear motivation, pretty chill. Need motivation, like desire motivation. There's one other one that like my head's just blocked. And then the challenging ones, I believe, are hope motivation. And then the most challenging is innocence motivation. Because people that are innocence motivation, they're literally just here to be like innocent in life. They're not meant to strive for things. They're just here and in the magic of it all. And it's, to me, I would love to be innocence motivation. Makes me think of a child and like how they're just so pure and innocent and in the moment with everything and there's no agenda. And through that, they have such a powerful impact. Right?
So when you first started speaking on I remember this call, and the reason I just grabbed my notebook was because I just want to show you like how many notes I made through this.
So before that, can I just say before that, so
drop.
when your innocence motivation, the transferred motivation is desire. Desire motivation are here to be the leaders. They're here to like really, make an impact. They're here to desire things. You think like desire motivation is like how a lot of us have conditioned to be.
Yeah.
And innocence is the opposite of that, like no control, just letting it happen. But innocence motivation people like are role models just by being in their own innocence. And before the call, I asked everyone to like let me know if they needed me to tell them what their motivation was. And Jess was like, can you tell me? And I said, your innocence motivation. And I think I said something like, I'm sorry, Jess, but I think that this is going to be like a really triggering thing for you. And the most interesting thing about it, to watch was, so the coach of that space is desire motivation. And a lot of the people in that space too are either desire motivation or innocence motivation. And it really supports that idea of trying to identify and be something we're not. So we're drawn to this desire motivation person because that's who we think we want to be, but it's the opposite of who you actually are.
It's also who I told myself I was.
Yeah.
In the majority of my life. So right up until even I'd say my early 30s, I was always like pushing myself in situations where I would be the leader, where I was operating from this space where I was like, yep, I am motivated. I bring people together. I'm going to show up and I'm going to lead these things. And that for me, I was like, that's who I am. Like, I am a leader. And I had noticed that from around the age 30 or so,
Saturn
I
return.
I'd wanted to step back more. I'd wanted to observe more. I had not had the same, and when I say bring people together, like I'm like every year was a party for a birthday.
Yeah.
Everything is everything. I'm bringing people together for events. I'm bringing people together for everything I possibly
But
could.
you
because
you
I
also
as a leader.
you also are a sixth line too. So what you just described very much correlates with that as well, because that first 30 years is like in the mess, in the life, partying. I'm
Yeah.
a third line, plus you're like have a third line body. And then the Saturn return happens and you start, the sixth line goes on the roof. And so then they become the observer, which is pretty much exactly what you described
Actually, exactly how I just
without even trying.
you sat in this call though, and like you said, innocence motivation is the opposite of desire. And so when you were speaking about desire, I was like, oh, this sounds like me. And then I was like, oh, this is not self-themed and observing all this time where I had been operating. And like I said, it was almost this part of my identity. Like I would
Yeah.
literally be like, I am a leader.
Because
And
we
then-
cling to what we're not. We over-identify with and cling to what we are not.
Wow. So when you started then speaking about the opposite, I wrote down things like operating from my own purpose as myself and surrendering to what is happening. But then there were things, and this is what I've struggled with, no agenda, no plan, and no motivation to do. And I struggle with that because I feel like I am a very motivated person. And I always have the willpower and the pressure to do the things. So this really, for me, it's an internal struggle.
Yeah.
Like it's a push pull that, and this is why when you said, let's talk about the innocence, I was like, because I'm struggling to navigate it.
Yeah.
Because I will go to initiate, or not even initiate, but I'll go to be like, okay, let's make the plan here. And then I'm like, hang on, you are supposed to surrender. And then it's about, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And then you spoke about, being in a state of being, which I have actively been practicing every day. That is a part of my awareness practices, to just be in a state of being. I feel like this is one of those ones, though, that is going to take a long time for me to like really decondition from. And then you said, as the role model, it's just like anyone who wants to come along for the ride is coming along for the ride, but I'm focusing on my journey and in my own empowerment. And I don't know if this is what you actually said, but this is what I took out of you, what I wrote down. And that I'm influential when I am living in my natural flow.
And you think about your launch and where your stuck point was with your launch.
Yes.
It was when you were not in your natural flow.
Yeah. 100%. And I was trying to show up as
And be like, this is how a business person would do it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Like being strategic in that way.
Yes. Oh, 100%. That is exactly. And then as I sit now, like I'm outside of launch. And as I sit now, I feel like I am going to be in a season now over the next couple of months where it is just going to be like, I am going to be just role modeling. I'm going to be being. I'm going
Yeah.
to be sharing that being and sharing that space of just me being me.
Yeah.
And I do regularly repeat, anyone who wants to come along for the journey, come along for the
Yeah.
journey. I
And you
regularly
do-
repeat that to myself.
I will say, as someone who's been in the space that you have, you do embody that energy in there. It is such a very beautiful and nurturing place in that way. And there's no like it trying to be anything. It just is what it is.
Right.
And that's beautiful. So then it's like the challenge is, how does that energy then translate to a launch? Because that's freaking hard, because this is what we're told a launch should look like.
Yep.
But maybe that's not how it's meant to look like for you. And I think when I sent you all those voice notes, I said something like that you should just be letting people see what it is that you do.
Oh, I just had a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because anytime you're trying to be like, this is the image I want people to see, that's diluting the power that you have and your impact.
Wow. I just have no words because this is landing for me right now.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take over and host. I'm having a moment.
I mean, look, I can talk
I
stuff
just
until
my
the
whole
face.
next 6 months is flashed before my eyes in terms of what I'm not going to be launching.
Yeah. And look, like I can tell you it's challenging. I am embodying my design. I have a business and I haven't created like a container or anything for a long time.
Yeah.
And because actually, if you look at my design, I'm really aligned to what I'm doing for you, coming in and enriching a space that already exists.
Yeah.
I don't have the activations in my chart to start shit. And so but a good person in business like launches things and that's how you make money and that's all the noise out there. And so then having to sit with that. And I always knew like I'm in a vision and whenever I would do vision stuff around what I wanted my business to be, it was always coming and being a part of other spaces and doing that because I don't like, to be honest, I don't want to launch and do all that shit. Like, I don't like it. At all. And that's supported by my design.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of shadow work and crap to have to sit through when that's not what we're told a successful business would do.
Oh, 100%. And then
And
even straight away, my
and
mind's then how do you build this or how do you, and I know I'm sitting in a space, I literally just spoke about this in the episode I recorded before I jumped on here, where it was a little bit of a launch reflection. And then I was talking about using EFT to support emotions through launches
yeah.
because I see that a lot with my clients is struggling with launches. And that's like the free offering that you're like, why aren't you sharing that with people? And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So I'm here to help you have a healthy emotional.
But my question would be to you is you just said, but the thing is, how do I build? But what if when you're aligned with your design, you actually don't give a shit about that?
Yes. And then how do you I suppose I could use tapping to let that go.
So like for
'Cause that's
me now,
conditioning.
because
That is
because
full-on conditioning.
people keep saying to me, what are your goals? What do you want to do in your business? And I'm like, I just want to have the space in my life to be able to say yes to the opportunities that are going to come. And they're like, but what opportunities are you going to make happen? And I'm like, none. And you watch people get so uncomfortable. And that seems like from a perspective of someone who like used to be really driven and focused and had a plan, that seems like someone so freaking wishy-washy that has no direction in life, that must be so lost. But I feel the most clear and aligned in my life that I ever have, and I have no freaking idea where things are going. And that excites the shit out of me.
Oh my God. I love that. I'm literally just having all these, what do you call it, revelations about launching. Like I
Yeah.
had, because like I said, I was just speaking about before, and I've had longer open cart periods. So I've learned that for me, particularly from that emotional perspective.
Oh, you need to like
I
leave
need
lots of
space.
space.
I need space. Exactly. And so a short period open cart did not work for me at all. I would always be in a low through that time. And it was just like lesson learned.
And
But then there was that head pressure. You get better results if you have a five.
but can I tell you, but with that, and you've just described what I was about to say, most of those techniques that people use are targeting people's not self.
Because they're not having the time to actually move through that.
No, or like a short, or like anyone with an undefined route. Like I can tell you, I used to not be, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that course. And then someone would post, it's like 24 hours before the cart closes. And suddenly I would like find myself going to book in. It was like targeting my undefined route. So it's like lots of those techniques that it say like making people have more clients are actually targeting their not self. And then you've got to sit and think, how do I feel? Like, how does that make me feel? Do I feel an integrity in targeting people in that way? Because personally, I don't. I don't want people to work with me because I've managed to pinpoint some insecurity and really pull at that vulnerability. That's not why I want people to work with me. I want people to work with me because they feel drawn to my energy and feel aligned. And business people would tell me that's flanky and that's never going to allow me to have success or whatever. But like, I've been doing this work now for 2.5 years, and like my business continues to grow, and I've got less and less strategic as the time goes on. And the less strategic I've got, the more success I've had.
Wow.
And that is not going to be right for everyone, but that is aligned with my design.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think we need to have a whole one on my launches.
And that's evergreen is such a popular thing at the moment. To me, evergreen personally feels like the ickiest thing, because they're like, oh, if you do evergreen, you only have to launch once. It's, yeah, but you have to sell all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
For me, evergreen is like I get to just naturally talk about my product or talk about what I do
yeah,
and invite people in.
yeah,
That's how evergreen feels for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it's like, it's different for everyone.
Mm.
But I think like from a business perspective, there's not a lot of people out there that, because a lot, and this isn't to shame anyone, but there's a lot of people using human design in business and only using it for business. And like I said at the start, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like using that in just for business, and how's your mind thinking that it's really working? But there'll come a point where that'll all fall in the ass, because suddenly you'll realize, oh, I haven't actually been doing this in a aligned way. I only think that I have.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. There is so much we could go into on this topic, but we're going to have to start to wrap it up. But
Oh, sorry, Jess.
no, don't be sorry. Like, I wanted a real raw conversation around this, and I love that you have brought this awareness into me.
Yeah.
And it feels my body is saying there's almost like this sense of peace through understanding what you're saying. It's, yeah, it does really make sense. It really does. And so then I love that I get to then navigate where then my open headspace takes over and is actually these people said you should do this way, or this person's doing it this way, or this
Yeah.
person is in your industry and she's doing it this way, or whatever the case is, where like I have noticed for me, when I feel certain about something, that's when it leads to frustration because I'm not actually meant to feel certain. But as I feel peaceful thinking about, okay, when I am at my most magnetic, it's when I'm actually just being, and when I actually get to just show up and be me.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. But then it's funny as I process out loud, there's then this part of me that's okay. So if I then invite someone into a space in a conversation, is that then me moving out of my self thing? Like, do you see what
It's
I'm
where
saying?
it's so layered and like challenging, to be honest, because it depends. Like maybe someone shared something really amazing and you've responded to that. And you're like, see, you just,
Yeah, no,
so-
because I'm thinking of conversations where I'm like,
right?
I love that
Like
kind of
you didn't
energy.
just invite me, like you had a response for that. So I feel like that's okay. And also for you, like you have a strategic mind and a strategic brain. So there is an element of, like you have a strategic mind. So there is that element of there being strategic within that innocence.
Yes.
So and that's where everything is so nuanced and balanced. It's most of the messaging a manifesting generator gets, like we said earlier, is they move really quickly. And that's wrong for 50% of manifesting generators that have an emotional authority, because they're not. If they're moving quickly, then they're not following their authority. They're not making decisions using their emotional wave. And so then they will end up in things that are incorrect for them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And like I identified through my launch, telling myself, oh, you did have an emotional wave at some point. Like you have had a wave, so you must have moved through this, but then not coming back to the thing that I'd actually responded to
Yeah.
and checking if the energy was actually still there, in which case for this it wasn't. So yes, I had waves, but I was telling myself that I'd made my decision through that authority process and I hadn't.
Yeah.
I just had went with what excited me and I ran with it and I moved
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
like you said, when that happened, it was like, bam, gone, everything done, created because when I do get that energy, I can
Yeah.
create very quickly.
Yes.
But what I'm learning to
100%.
do is do that once I have had the energy and then have have the authority wave and then come back and then I can move really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Create like a whole program in a day. Yeah. Once
But
I
then
come
you
back and
know
check that it's right.
that you're creating the correct thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then you're using your energy in a way that's so much more aligned and correct for you.
Oh,
And so it can feel slower and it will be frustrating and challenging, but it's actually going to be better for you in the bigger picture because you're not wasting your energy on things that actually you don't want to do.
yes. Yeah.
And you are susceptible to that because you have an open head and undefined ajna.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Tegan.
You're so
Much for
welcome.
everything that you have just shared. As you can hear, Tegan is always spot on with what she talks. And it's not meant to feel easy. It is not meant to feel like I just shared before. There's this part of me that has this sense of peace, feeling okay, I can be and things will be okay. Like I can just be me and I can be in this state of being rather than leadership and doing.
Yeah.
And the things are actually going to be really okay. But then I'm also sitting with that part in my mind that's but this isn't how it goes, or this isn't what you're
Yeah.
used to. And that's where that deconditioning process comes in.
Yeah.
So if
And
you would like, sorry.
And I was just to say, I'm 5 years in to intentionally doing this, and I still have to sit with that.
Yeah.
Like, I still have to sit with those things. And yes, they say, like I said, it's 7 years, but we're constantly being conditioning. So there's no end point with this. It's a lifetime journey because we're being conditioned all the time in every environment that we're in.
If you would like a one-on-one with Tegan, how can they find you?
On my Instagram at Tegan Parky or on my website, teganparkinson.com.
Amazing. So we're going to link all of that below so that you can go and have a chat to Tegan. As you can hear, like she just gets right into it.
I know I never,
I
don't know. I don't know if you've ever noticed this in Slack, but like 99% of the time, I never answer the question people ask me. I'm always like, yeah, but and go off in a total tangent. But it always is like what people need to hear.
But that's exactly what I was
Because
gonna
often
say.
like what we
need
think,
to hear.
and I think this came up the other day, like on our call the other week, was like what people generally think the issue is. It's usually something deeper than that. But we're so caught in that it's like this thing that's on the surface that we're missing the deeper root. And often we need like someone else that's not in it to help us see it.
Oh, 100%. You dropped a bomb on one of our members the other day. As I was speaking, I'm like, oh my God, people are like, I'm not coming in that space. This is the discomfort of growth, can I just say? Whether it be through human design or whether it be through finding and working through your shadow work. This is using another modality. This is the discomfort of growth. And we were in a call last month, and I will keep it relatively private for my mentee, but Tegan just dropped this bomb on the whole way that we had planned, or she had planned, sorry, on launching this product. But she sat with it. She took it away and she sat with it, and she was like, do you know what? When we then had our next call, she mapped out this whole plan that was so in line with her design. And I was like, wow, if you are networking, then how about it's like a mini chat funnel with a collaboration giveaway? Like, how about it's looking at the networks? And then she was like, yes, I could do that. And you could see her having a response. She doesn't have to ride an emotional wave. She gets to just run with it. So she's had this response, and then she's created this amazing, and then she jumped off, and then this person said they'd collaborated, and it's happening now in such an aligned way, whereas the other way was feeling stuck and frustrating for her. But in order to get to that place, it was Tegan being like, look, you can do it that way if you want to do it that way, but you're not actually meant to do it that way in alignment with your design.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I will never judge anyone Like I can say to someone like, this is what I think, but at the end of the day, like you've got to do what's right for you in your journey.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think one thing that's benefited me coming to this after being a teacher for so long is that I studied how to teach. And I feel like I'm really good at meeting people where they're at, because that's what I had to do with 25 or 30 kids. I had to meet them all where they're at. And I think that when you can meet people at that right point and just give them that one thing, that is so impactful. And we didn't really talk, I didn't really talk about anything else with her. It was just that one thing that we talked about.
And it was so impactful, so impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to say, I do try to approach things in a very like gentle and nurturing way.
Oh, you do. You do.
You're just dropping bombs on everyone. That wasn't you. I'm just meaning, yeah.
As I said it, I was like, oh my God, I'm scaring people.
That's okay.
Shut up. But it is the discomfort of the work though, right? Like, of any kind of work. If you want to move out and embody your human design and move out of living constantly in your conditioning and you're not self-themes, then like with any work, the truth bombs are the ones that are going to be the most uncomfortable. They're going to shake everything up, but they are also going to be the most impactful.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know the ladies in the mastermind, and I feel the ladies listening to this podcast who are ready for that kind of growth, like they get it. They get it. We need some bombs, and then we hold them in the most loving and deeply supportive way.
Yeah. I will always give you like strategies to support you with the bombs. I won't just light the fuse and walk away.
Oh, goodness me. Oh, Tegan, thank you so much. I have loved this conversation. It was so much fun. And if you have been listening today, please go over and share with Tegan what your key takeaways were. Book a one-on-one, have a human design reading. It is a really beautiful experience. It will give you such in-depth, like more than any report that you're going to get online, because as Tegan said, she gets to respond to you and meet you where you're at. And so what she shares in that session is going to be just what you need in that moment. So please, if you feel pulled to, go and check her out, say hello. And if you want to work with Tegan regularly as well from that sort of business lens support space, then come and talk to me about the mastermind.
It's been so lovely, Jess. I knew coming into this, like you said at the start, we have no idea where this is going to. I actually think it's been really impactful, because I think the things we've talked about, people in business, I feel like it's things that they've probably thought about on the inside or felt internally, but it's not really externalized that often.
100%. I completely agree. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Wow, what a journey it's been today. We are so grateful for each and every one of you who tuned in to Alive and Thriving. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help us keep growing, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform. It's a simple but powerful way to support a small business like ours to continue to make an impact.